I'm curious though. Maybe Jean-Paul Getty had a private collection, one that isn't, shown to the public, where he does have African art. And this is only the Getty Museum. This isn't the Villa, so he probably has even more art at the Villa, and maybe he has, a representation of African art there. I don't know. I haven't been there. I'm only speaking about, my day here. But again, it's like this is only a small portion. This is only a small section of of Earth, of the world's history. So, those are my thoughts. Peace and blessings. Hey everybody, so those were my thoughts from my first trip to the Getty. And sure enough, I found African art, I found black art here at the Getty. And check this out, this artwork right here presents very, nostalgic, reminiscent, hood adornments, or accoutrements, maybe. Look at all this. I was quite surprised to find this at a Getty. In fact, this is at the Getty Villa. So just as I said, in that first video that I made, and of which I hadn't been to the Getty Villa, I was only visiting the Getty Museum. Well, I did find that there is more African art or black inspired art at the Getty Villa. So I had to do a little research, had to search for it, but it is there. It, however, isn't part of the... So I do have one criticism. Yeah, okay. So it's not part of the permanent collection, excuse me. And being that it's not part of the permanent collection means that, maybe someone else curated the collection and what have you. So Getty really didn't have the idea or the inspiration to include African art. So that's the criticism. Still a white man's exhibit for the real. But my wife and I had a good time, and we're sharing with you tidbits. Here we are playing around with the phone. That's a real phone number. And that person was real doing those extensions. Jade.
Can I get those individual braids?
Hey everybody. So I kind of wrapped up. I'm kind of finished with my tour of the Getty Museum in 2022. Last time I was here, it was 8 years ago, and I didn't have as much time to visit all of the galleries. And in fact, I didn't visit any galleries. We were here only to get some photographs because this was the popular place to be. This is the Getty Museum, and let me give you some history about Getty from what I just learned, okay? So Jean-Paul Getty was born in Minnesota in, I think 1916? No, 1896? Because he died in 1970 something. So he's about 80 years old, I guess, when he died. Yeah, so he was born in the 1800s. So he was born into money. His father was a lawyer. He earned his money in oil, became an oil, what is it? What do you call it? Oil maven, oil billionaire, whatever. He's a white man, so he built his collection, traveling all over the world, collecting works of art. And we have the benefit today of visiting the Getty Museum to look at his collection and admire his collection. So the one thing that troubles me about this, or the one thing that I see being very clear, is that, he was a white man. And so all of the representations here that I've seen so far are of, white Europeans. Very few depictions, very few works of art that include Africans in them. There is a bust of an African, there are paintings with a few Africans in them, but largely the African presence is absent. Matter of fact, I just walked out of the display, the exhibit for the Virgin Mary, and there's no mention of Ethiopia. or Eritrea, for that matter, anywhere in there, or any other African nations. But there are mentions of the Virgin Mary, in the Americas, the Virgin de Guadalupe, and also Armenia, and some other nations. But no mention of Ethiopia, no mention of Eritrea, no East African nations. And I think I learned in a Harvard class, Harvard has these extension courses on edX. I think I learned that the first Christian nation was in Africa. It was Ethiopia. I mean, there is some contention between Armenia and Ethiopia, but for the most part, it's Ethiopia. The other thing that I noticed about a lot of the exhibits, it's the timeline. I think the earliest work that I saw today was around the 1200s. Well, as far as I know, I did the research, but Ethiopia and the churches of Lalibela were constructed in 1181. So there is a rich history in Africa that isn't represented here at the Getty Museum. And of course, there's also a rich history in Asia as well that isn't represented here at the Getty. So Asia and Africa are completely, not even misrepresented, just simply ignored, by the Jean-Paul Getty Museum. Why was that? It's because he was a white man. Because he wasn't probably interested in any other parts of the globe, but, France is well represented here. Italy is well represented. A little bit of the Dutch, the Netherlands. So you get all of this representation from it, and it's skewed, But I understand. Jean-Paul Getty, he was a white dude, and he represented, whiteness. For him to have been a billionaire and for him to have done this, that's cool. And what I wonder about the modern billionaires of today, especially of Kanye West or Ye. Like, dude, if you got $1 billion, why don't you go and travel? Travel the globe. Go to Ethiopia. Get an education. Go to Eritrea. Don't just keep going to Italy and France and try to do the fashion thing, man. See the world is much larger, vaster. Take your billions and create a museum like this. The Kanye West Museum. I mean, instead of losing $1 billion from Adidas and Balenciaga and all these other people, man, take that billion and create a museum like this. Or at least travel the globe and learn about the rich history of the world beyond America and beyond Europe. That's all I'm saying. So, and imagine, these kids are getting an education. They're walking around the museum, they're seeing things, they're being exposed to a lot. And the question is, are they going to have an opportunity to travel? Are they going to be able to see the world through their own eyes, or are they always going to have to look through this lens, this white American or this European lens, because there's so much more? So those are my thoughts here at the Getty Museum, wrapping up the tour. I think there's a few other sections that I haven't seen, but for the most part, I've seen a lot. Ancient relic. Well, folks, sure enough, at the Getty Villa, that's where we found the African art, specifically Nubian art, the art from Nubia. And, well, what can I say about Nubia? Nubia is located in the Sudan, what is today South Sudan. And, the darkest people, the blue-black people, some of the darkest human beings still reside or come from Sudan, the tallest and the darkest. So there's a rich melanated history there. The Nubian history goes way back, to the Egyptian time, even before Egypt. And so when we think of the Egyptian pyramids, well, we get this overwhelming sense that Egypt, started the pyramids, and the pyramids came from Egypt. But it's actually the Nubian civilization from which these pyramids sprang forth. And today, if you travel to Nubia, or if you travel to Aswan, you will find a city called Meroe, where there are hundreds of pyramids. They were the forerunners to the Great Pyramids of Giza. So there's a great deal of history here, and this is African history at the Getty. "109" or 109 is an idea as much as it is a number. I call it 109. To understand 109, it takes a creative mind willing to explore numerology, psychology, history, philosophy, and statistics. iSee109 explores the mysterious interpretations of this number from a myriad of perspectives. So the idea was for us to take a trip to the Getty Museum. And as I mentioned before, in my previous visit to the Getty Museum, where we visited today, my wife and I, this is the Getty Villa, and there's the Getty Museum that I visited a couple of weeks ago when I made that previous video where I was talking about visiting the museum and not seeing representations of Africa. And in that video, as I mentioned before, maybe there were some African relics at the Getty Villa, but because I hadn't visited it, I couldn't speak on it. I didn't know. So I went to the Getty Villa, and sure enough, there's African relics and things there. This is some funky hair right here. Reminds me of a beehive. You dig? But the thing about it is, this exhibit wasn't well advertised. And I learned about it through Chip Williams. He and I are now friends on Facebook. I met Chip in Little Ethiopia in 2018. And so he posted about it. And I thought, wow, look, there's some African art. There's an exhibit about Nubia. And it's at the Getty. So I got excited and I said, I'm going. And my wife and I took my wife. I said, we're going. We are going to make a trip of it. So we did. And sure enough, there's African art at the Getty. And some of the most supreme African art, the Nubian art. Now, of course, this is a temporary exhibit. It's going on until, I believe, April of 2023. So when you see this, hopefully I haven't shown you everything that's available to see, and hopefully it'll inspire you to go. But if you can't make it for whatever reason and you watch my video, then that's cool too. So here we're taking a walkthrough right now of the Nubian exhibit. You're gonna see pretty much everything. I'm gonna go quickly so I can't stop to show you in detail, but I will show you a few things, you know. So they have the map of Nubia, of Egypt, to give you a sense of where it's located. All of these artifacts. There's some rich history in there. And what they did have are examples of mirrors that were once used by the Nubians. And I mentioned to my wife that there were, in addition to the mirrors that you could find, there were also Afro picks. When you go far back into the history, you can find Afro picks among the relics, which is an important sign that, hey, these people were black. So I'm just showing you the exhibits. We're moving quickly through. It's a very small exhibit, and right, as I mentioned, it's not part of the permanent exhibit. So maybe Jean-Paul Getty was never interested in African art, and this is someone else's inspiration, and someone else's inspired exhibit. So that's it. That's the Nubian exhibit at the Getty. But at least they have something of African significance. So it's a pretty nice. It was a beautiful time. It was a beautiful, place to stay and enjoy the day, with your significant other. So I highly recommend it. And I did get to see some African art at the Getty. All right, I guess that's all I wanted to say is, yeah, the Getty had some African art. So that's about it. Still doesn't change the fact that most of the collection that he has is of white, Greek, European, etc., which is indicative of the fact that he was a white man. But nobody's perfect. That's what I'll say about that. Peace and blessings.